Oh, Maida, right? It's bittersweet to be with you again. And as I told John and Jeremy, I can appreciate, no matter what age we are, to realize that both parents are gone. I mean, it's a milestone. It's significant. And we have a wonderful, easy, and friendly relationship. We have access to each other. And so we speak very freely. I lost my mother a couple of years ago, and it's no matter what. I have children, and no matter what age you are, you're somebody's child. So the passing of our dear Maida Rosenberg Miller is a milestone for this family. We remember her, obviously, during that first occasion where I was privileged to be with you when we lost Harold, of blessed memory. And this chapel is beautiful and very formal, but I want everyone to feel that we're just talking to each other, remembering. We're going to hear, of course, from the two Boychiks, the sons, John and Jeremy. And after this segment of the service is over, we'll make our way up the hill for the burial. And you see in the booklet you have, that I hope you all received from our friends here at Pacific View, on the back page is the Kaddish prayer, which actually we'll save for graveside. I should mention, in case some of you don't know or don't remember, I'm Rabbi Ben Kamin, and I'm the director in San Diego of an institute called Reconciliation, the Synagogue Without Walls. And in that spirit, I come here today, although I'm very much a rabbi, we operate in reconciliation with the understanding that it turns out we're all God's children, and whatever way you hear or don't hear God, the last thing we are is judgmental. And we're not judging today, we're simply remembering and honoring. But I am honored to bring some structure and some format to this service that's derived from the more inclusive and progressive Jewish tradition. We the Jews, we parented Christianity. So if anybody should be reaching out to the other groups, it should be us. We should be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I know I'm talking to a family that agrees with me because that's what Maida was all about. Besides, as her sons will elaborate, being a completely real person. This Gingy with her red hair and her quite noticeable physical beauty, the intuition she had, the loving hands, everything about her. There was no affect. So we remember her and we draw from the Proverbs that tell us that the world weeps when a fruit tree dies. That's what she was. She gave us shade to John and to Jeremy, to Jacqueline, and of course to Rachel and Peter and Nathaniel and Jonah, to everybody. And we were nourished by the fruits of her alacrity and her engagement of this life, and also, as we observed, an extraordinary beloved friendship that she shared with Harold for a long time. The psalmist wrote, and we in the Judeo-Christian world have been reading these psalms for a very long time, and they speak not to faith, but to the Spirit. The psalmist wrote, God, what are we, in fact, that you even notice us? What are we human beings that you are mindful of us? In the end, we realize we're like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, and the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not go with us. Our money does not go with us. All the plaques given to us, the certificates and the vanities bestowed upon us, they don't go with us. But what does go with us, and which returns over and over again every time somebody remembers us, is what we Jews call the nefesh. That means the soul. That we actually believe is a little piece of God that God installs in each one of us, regardless of what our faith is or who we are or our color. Every one of us is a reflection of God's image. It's the soul. And when we think of Maida, when we think about her and remember her, and we can see her face, we can almost hear her voice, and things she told us that informed us, changed us, angered us, delighted us, remind us of her effect on us. She lives. When you remember somebody, their soul has wings, and we become wholehearted through memory. We also know that there is no place where God is not. So Maida is safe, and she is enshrined by our memories of her and our love for her. So God, let us be wholehearted and remember this wonderful wife, mother and grandmother, good friend. And we know with her passing again that the world weeps when a fruit tree dies, but from the fruit there is always life. And the psalmist wrote about good people. God, who may come to live in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? The answer, those who are real, who are upright, who simply do justly, and who speak the truth within their hearts, who don't filter it, who are accessible and approachable, who don't just slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them. In fact, who enable them, who facilitate their dreams. These are the ones who come to be with you in your house, O God, who scorn lawlessness but honor those who revere civilized life, who care for good things, who choose their words with thought, who are judicious, and who give their word. And when they give their word, they don't retract it. They follow through. These are the ones who come live close to you, O God, those who don't exploit others and who don't take from people simply for taking, but who actually are the givers. O God, we know, and we think of this when we recall our Maida, that those who have lived in this way shall never be forgotten because they taught us what is good. Now, the 23rd Psalm is so familiar to everyone of all the faiths, and it is good to share it together. I'm going to read it on your behalf. You may know a few words, you may know the whole thing. Join with me as you see fit. Again, nobody is judging today, we're just remembering. But it's good to share it. David the king, who was also a wondrous musician, wrote these words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." David had a son, Solomon, also a king, also a writer. Had he lived in this era, he would have also been on Kindle. Solomon wrote a wonderful book. It's called Kohelet in Hebrew, Ecclesiastes. He cherished skepticism. He wanted people to ask questions. And he understood that this life is bittersweet and everything falls into place. Solomon wrote, "For everything there is a season, even for this, a time for every experience under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to throw stones, and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And before we hear personal words of recollection, permit me to add this brief reading from the book of Proverbs, as though it was written for your mom. The writer of Proverbs asks, Eshet Chayil, Mimsa, a woman of valor, a good woman, who can find her? She is more precious than all the fine pearls in the world. In his lifetime, her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks for nothing. She does him good, only good, all the days of her life. She cherishes her work because she finds it rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her beautiful, clean hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future with cheerful trust. She speaks with wisdom and care, and the law of kindness is upon her lips. Her sons today rise up to bless her, as they will in just a moment. And in the heaven, her husband sings her praises as he waits for her now, saying to himself, many women have done well, but you, Maida, you excel above them all. May her memory be for a blessing. John, did you want to begin? No, we'll have Jerry.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rabbi. Words are very touching, bring tears to my eyes. Mary Cretella, many of you know her. She was married to Melvin Levine, who is my mother's cousin. My mother adored Melvin, and even after Mary and Melvin parted ways in some ways, you never part ways when you have children, my mother adopted Mary as a cousin, and my mother tended to adopt people as family. Anytime she loved them, they were family. So Mary wrote, Maida Miller came into my life when I married her cousin Jerome Melvin Levine in 1957. We shared many of each other's life events, our children's growth into adulthood with their achievements and lives that each of them lived. Maida's intelligence, humor, and honesty were often exercised in my behalf as she became my trusted confidant. We grew closer, and each of us claimed the other as real cousins rather than cousins-in-law. We visited often, especially as we retired from active professional lives. When she and Harold left for California to be nearer their families and to enjoy the more benign climate, our visits became limited to the telephone, but we could still share the events of our lives. I was sad that I could not travel to see them, especially I regret that I could not be with her as she grieved over Harold's passing. One of my special memories is the evenings we spent remembering the poetry we learned in our youth. The recall that both Harold and Maida had of poems and songs of those times was amazing to me. I miss Harold and Maida. I am bereft at the loss of my cousins and friends, but if there's an afterlife where we are reunited, then I know Maida would be delighted to be again with her beloved Harold. I offer my sincere sympathy to Maida and Harold's children and grandchildren. You lost a remarkable patriarch, and now an equally remarkable matriarch, and I personally grieve for my loss of my extraordinary and dear friends. So I thought about my time with my mother, and when I was young, mother is an archetype. Mother is a psychological reality inside oneself. But as I grew older, she began to be individuated as a unique person. And after our father passed away, I spent a lot of time with our mother, And I got to know her much better than I ever had before. And she turned out to be, as my father said, a very good woman. She was also hilarious. One time, she did not want me to leave her, and I extended my trip an extra week from home, for my dogs, for my wife, for my work. And when it was time for me to go, I could not find my wallet. And it's very hard to get on an airplane these days without your identification. And I crawled all over the floor. I looked in every car, every restaurant, every motel room. I could not find my wallet. My mother said, "I'm calling the police. The police will have to get on this." I said, "Don't call the police. I've got enough trouble." And then I noticed that my wallet was on her walker, draped in half and covered with her sweater. What a rascal. When she got very sick. I arrived January 8th to look after her, and it turned out that was 2 years to the day from the day our father passed away. And that was the day she got very, very sick. And I'm sure that was not a coincidence. And I was afraid I would not get to say hi to her again because she was unresponsive and moved from rehab to the ER to the ICU while I was in transit from the airport in Santa Ana. But she did come to. The brilliant Dr. Shahanian and the other brilliant doctors at Saddleback took great care of her. And I did get to spend some time with her. And on more than one occasion, she said to me, "Johnny, get me the hell out of here." She said, "Go to the kitchen. There's a scissors in the kitchen." Actually, there's scissors all over the house. "Go to the kitchen, get a scissors, and cut these wires. Cut these tubes, and we'll go out for Chinese food and watch Jeopardy." And she did not want to die, but she did not want to live in the hospital. That was not real life for her. She wanted her freedom. She's a very gregarious and charismatic person. Everybody knew how intelligent she was. She was extremely strong-willed. She thought of herself as the original woman's liver. But she was a very good person. One time, she was in some situation in which there was disharmony, and she said to me, "I was not put here on earth to do harm." And that's who she really was. As my brother reminded me, she met Marishi on several occasions, and on one occasion she said, "I'm just a woman." And Marishi, as Jerry reminded me, said, "No, you're a very smart woman." So when I think of her, I know she would not want to live a life of debilitation. I know that it was time for her to pass. And I know that she's living a life of light, a soul sailing through realms of light. And I miss her in the sense that I'd like to talk to her, I'd like to discuss my day or her day. But I have no doubt that she is where she should be, and although we miss her friendship, she would rather be in these realms of light than to be encumbered by this physical world. And just like our father, she did it her way. Jerry?
Good words. Jerry, come make yourself comfortable, take your time. I think we're all required to put this on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Synchronicity or tuning into the same energy is something that I've noticed throughout life, and I'm happy to say I wrote very little because pretty much everything I was going to say has been said, but it will be said a little bit differently. My name is Jeremy M. Miller. I go by Jerry, and I'm the youngest son of Maida and Harold, my deceased father, and now deceased mother. I'm 61 years old, so when I say youngest son, I don't mean I'm a little boy. I'm going to have to take off my glasses to read my illegible notes. Okay. I've always looked, or at least for many decades, that life is a contract. And it has a beginning of birth, and it has an end of death. And this is the contract that we've all entered into. And so this is a natural process. And I see only triumph, no tragedy in this. I want to say thank you, Rabbi, for really nice words. Thank you, John. Really well done. Nice words, very apropos, really pretty close to mine. Thank you to my children, my nephew, my friends who were able to join us today. Okay. I think it's important to note that the 2 years that after my father passed, and my mother passed 2 years and a few months after my father, my wife, Dee Dee, who's sitting right there, made it a point to visit my mother once or twice every week and take her to the doctor, keep her company, have fun with her. And that was really a labor of love, and thank you. Thank you all for your kindness. You're here as one more expression of kindness. I put some thought into how I would dress today. John will attest that I actually asked him more than once. I asked him a couple of times, and I was happy that he said it was casual, but these are fresh washed, fresh clean. But there's a reason why I chose these clothes, because it took me my whole life to realize that my mother was right. Life is white and black. This earth is white and black. It's not all white and it's not all black, it's both. And the jacket is the combination, so that was done on purpose. She understood this, I might add, and she was always teaching me this. Don't be expecting the best, don't be expecting the worst. They're both here. So that was a lesson that took me many years to learn, and I really salute her, truly salute her for that. And I really believe she's completely correct. I believe it's a very good universe and believe in God for sure, personally. But we're here, and life is given to us on its terms, not ours. I should tell you I'm wearing my favorite piece of jewelry, which Dee gave me. This is a blue stone. Blue is symbolic in many traditions of God, goodness, the sky, the water, spirituality. So this is purposeful. I'm also wearing the Star of David, the six-pointed Jewish star, which is the towering symbol of the Jewish love of a perfected intellect. So I'm wearing these things in honor of my mother and in deference to God. Okay. I remind you that you're invited to Sammy Wu's afterward in the spirit of celebration. She loved Chinese food, and John, we talked about this. John and I just spontaneously agreed this was the right way to celebrate her beautiful life. I had a dream, and I really did. I think it was either the day after or 2 or 3 days after she died, and it was kind of like dictated to me. You have a copy of it, but now I've explained it a little bit more to you with the blue and the Jewish star. So in it, my mother, as a younger woman, stood in front of a beautiful blue cloud. And as you may know, the Hasidic Jews Jews look at blue as a symbol of good or God, and some even meditate on this blue. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there is also this belief, as there is in many cultures. So it's a good thing. Anyway, the dream continued, or the dictation, which I remembered, because I woke right up and wrote it down. My mother stood before the blue, and a kind voice whispered, "Take it, Maida, go into the blue light." I think the voice was that of my father. Characteristically, my mother replied, "Shh, Harold." And he did. Then she said, also characteristic, "Let me think about this." Time passed. Then a beautiful white light appeared. She was pleased by its beauty, but again replied, "I need to think about this." Time passed. Then a group of happy angels appeared. Her response was the same. "I need more time to think of these choices." Next, a group of powerful angels appeared, only to be met by the same response, and time passed. In the distance, angelic symphonic music was heard. But it was a lot prettier than that. It sounded kind of like a TV show jingle, which my brother did reference. Then a crystal studio appeared, and it was Alex Trebek of Jeopardy fame. And there was one luscious golden recliner chair, empty, with a small table holding a full glass of heavenly vodka. Those of you who know my mother, that's all of you, know that this is plausible. I dressed comfortably because she wanted to be comfortable. And this was a very comfortable dream. She looked very happy. Our mother replied, "That's it." And she took her place, sipped the vodka, and said, "L'chaim," which means to life, you know? But the story does not quite end there. Mr. Trebek said, "Our category is Judaism. What is the question answered by the word Judaism?" She replied, "What is the celebration of life?" So again, my thanks to all of you for all of your support and positivity, and my blessings to my mother and ultimately to all of us when our day comes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for averting the catastrophe. Thanks, Rabbi.
They say in the synagogue, Yesher Koach, when you go from strength to strength. I say that to both of you. You know, let me just put this on because oh. As you both spoke, I was thinking about the fact that I had mentioned being from Israel. The Hebrew language is quite mystical, as your remarks had sparks of mysticism in them. The Hebrew word for the sons, in other words, the male children of parents, is banim. Banim. It's also the same word for builders. And today you become builders. You are the banim of the future, that your parents are gone. And you have begun that process of building the future for your children, for your generations, by having learned from the temple of your parents. And I've had the privilege now to be a part of remembering both Harold and Maida. And I want to offer this brief poem in memory of both of them. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we surely remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they now are part of us as we remember them. May the memory of both your parents be for a blessing. And let us answer, Amen.
Amen.
Now it is also written for all of us, whenever we come to a service like this, we consider our own mortality. It's impossible not to. It's important to do so. It is written by the Jewish people that birth is a beginning and death is a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back, we pray, in this life, to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey itself, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. And so we know today that birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. Now, in his sorrow, the biblical character Job cried out in the Hebrew, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mivorach. God, you have given, God, you have taken, blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name a name like Maida, endures beyond the grave, and there is strength in her name. So with Job today, we would say in our hearts, Adonai Natan, God, you gave us this matriarch, you gave us Maida, you gave us a loved one who will simply not be forgotten for all the many, many, many qualities about her that were truly good and enduring. We offer today the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken Maida away. And so we pray for the strength today to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as our hearts would sing, Yehi Shem Adonai Mivorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever, and blessed be this life that we honor and celebrate. Now, the only two liturgical pieces of this memorial service come to us now. The first we'll share together here in this chapel, and the second, as I mentioned, the Kaddish we'll share together at graveside. This first, it is also rather brief, is called El Malei Rachamim, and it is my honor to read it on behalf of all of you, on behalf of this family. It simply asks God to receive Maida's soul. Let me mention very briefly that in our community, we Jews don't think a lot about the afterlife. It's this life that fascinates us, like it did for Maida, to be present to repair the world, to comfort somebody, to feed the hungry, to encourage somebody. The next life we leave to God. We trust it is a good place. And so we ask God simply in this prayer to receive her beautiful soul. I would ask you, please, to rise. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזו הרקיע את נשמת מידה האימא שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתירר בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. These words simply mean, compassionate God, you who understands everything, the eternal spirit of the universe, please grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved and remarkable Maida Miller, who has now gone from this world. O God of the mercies, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up to the lives of her children and grandchildren, and therefore be bonded to everlasting life. O God, you are her inheritance. May her body rest in peace, even as her soul lingers close to you. And to all of this, let us answer, Amen. And would you please be seated?